back once again. Now, who is the sender in a communication process? I said earlier that we have 6 elements of the communication process, and I gave a list of them: the sender or source, the first one; the message, the second one; the channel, the third one; the receiver, the fourth element; the fifth element is feedback; and the sixth and the last element is noise. So who is the source or sender? Now, you are the source or sender. The source or sender is the person who initiates the communication process. Now, anyone who is capable of initiating a message to send across to someone to receive is a sender. Now, you need to recognize that as a human being, so far you're a human, you communicate in different ways. Now, you are the source. And how do you initiate your message? It is through encoding. You have to develop the ability and capacity to encode. Now, what does it mean to encode? Encoding is simply a thought process, to be able to put together your thoughts and your ideas or messages in a way that will be understandable and expressible to your reader or your viewer. That's the duty of a source or sender. Now, the next element brings us to the next element, which is the message. Now, as a source or a sender, what exactly are you sending? It is a message. You're sending across a message. Now, what is the message? Now, the message is the content, the idea, the information, or the thoughts you share or send across. Now, a simple example will be you trying to make a call to your mom as a student. Let me relate based on studentship. Pardon my error grammar. Now, you're trying to make a call to your mom. There's this textbook you need to buy. You need to send a message. Now, what's the message? The message is the information on the textbook requesting for money, okay? So as a source or sender, you're sending a message across to your mom. Sending a message to get a textbook. Now, how do you send the message? Brings us to the channel. The channel is the medium or pathway through which the information you want to communicate is passed across. Now, we have various channels. We have broadcast media channels like television and radio. We have print media channels. You have the newspapers and magazines. Then you also have online channels. You have social media. You have LinkedIn. You have YouTube. You have Facebook and other ones you can think of. Now, even your little handsets or your Android phone or Android 13 or 14 Pro Max, whichever one you're using, can serve as a channel. With the example I gave, you as a student trying to reach out to your mom to get money for a textbook, your phone could serve as the channel you would use for to pass across this information. So channel is what makes your message, the source or sender's message, easy to be sent across or communicated. Now, as a communicator, you really do not need to study mass communication before you become a communicator. You are already a communicator. So far, you're human and you pass messages across. So what I'm doing right here is just to break down the elements of a communication process, so you understand how this thing works. You have been using it, but you may not really know it has a name since you're not studying mass communication. But worry no more, because I will help you. So the third element, which I just discussed now, is the channel. Now, what then is the fourth element? The fourth element is the essence of the first three, and that is the receiver. Now, the receiver of any communication message is one who receives the message sent by the sender. The receiver is you. While I'm speaking, you're receiving this message, makes you a receiver. And the receiver, using the example I gave, is your mom. You as a source or sender trying to send a message about a textbook you need to get to her. And she receives the message by decoding. You know, I said earlier, the sender encodes a message by conceiving your thought or idea in an understandable way, okay? Making it easy for your receiver to understand. But the receiver then decodes the message by processing it, analyzing it, and making meaning from it. Now, if your mom understands art, the first sentence you make, "Mom, I need a textbook," even before you say you need money, she already knows you need money. So as the receiver of that message, she would then respond to you by crediting your account details and all. So the receiver simply receives the message sent across by the sender, and the receiver is the essence of the communication message. Now, no communication is made if there is no sender and receiver. There has to be a sender, and there also have to be a receiver. Now, the fifth point is feedback. Now, what is feedback? Feedback is very important in the element of communication process, and feedback is simply a response, a reaction, or reply that is given to the communication. Now, if you're trying to communicate and there is no feedback, then that communication might be declared as an error, okay? Because there is no way you will be able to relate to how well or how poor your communication went if there is no feedback. Now, there are verbal forms of feedback. There are also non-verbal forms of feedback. Now, do you know when you nod your head sometimes you might be giving a feedback to something? Now, imagine a church, a pastor is preaching an interesting sermon and you're feeling the vibe of the pastor. You might begin to nod your head, oh yeah man, you're speaking the truth. Now, that is a form of feedback. Now, if you're in class and your teacher or lecturer is teaching and you're taking down notes, that is also a form of feedback. If you're in that same class and you're sleeping, it is also a form of feedback. Now, what message is that passing across? The lecturer is boring to you. If you're in the class and you're also checking time because you have an appointment with your boo, let's say that's Valentine's Day is coming, and he said meet me at 12 p.m. and it's almost 12 and this lecturer is not trying to end the class, you begin to check your time. It's a form of feedback, saying you're not concentrating on the message being passed across to you and you have somewhere to go to. Now, feedback could be in verbal forms, which could be responding directly, like, excuse me, ma, I have a question, trying to answer a question in class, or non-verbal forms like sleeping, like nodding, like writing, like time checking. So that is all on feedback. Now, the next and the last point, which will shock you, is noise. Do you know noise is part of the elements of the communication process? Well, maybe you didn't. Now, let me help you understand this concept. Now, noise to you might just be sound that is not comfortable in ears. But in communication, noise is anything that hinders a communication from being properly understood. Okay, anything that hinders your communication, what you're trying to communicate, from being effectively communicated and properly understood. Now, let me break this down. There are three forms of noise actually. The first is the physical noise, the second is the semantic noise, and the third is the psychological noise. Now, physical noise, you could call it internally generated noise. That's noise around you that affects you or disrupts your communication process. Like I said earlier, the first example I gave you, making a call to your mom to get a textbook. Now, if you're making that call and there's a construction going on somewhere, you hear the sound of those machines and all, you might not really be able to pass that message across. Or maybe you say it, but she won't hear you because there's some sort of noise. Now, if you're in a classroom and the fan is really giving this weird noise, even though it's blowing some breeze, you won't get to hear the lecturer well because there is a form of noise. Now, that noise is physical. Let's call it internally generated noise. Now, the second noise is semantic noise. Simply language noise or noise brought about by error in communication. You know, if you have a lecturer that doesn't communicate properly in the English language or has this H factor or some other mother tongue factors that might not allow you hear and understand him or her well, you could call that semantic noise. Or imagine as a Nigerian in a Russian school where they speak in Russia. You won't be able to understand whatever you're being taught because you do not know how to speak nor understand Russian. So semantic noise is simply noise that is language generated, not being able to understand something because you don't understand that language or there is an error in the English communication, the way it is placed. And the last noise is psychological noise. Now, this one is what I would call it emotional noise. Like noise that's brought about from emotions. Like if you're hungry and in a class, you might not concentrate because you were hungry, especially if you now have ulcer pain. That would really be worse. Okay, so it brings you some kind of discomfort and all, and you feel really, really uninterested in the class. That is psychological noise. Now, if you're also trying to concentrate in class after hearing a bad news from home, maybe grandmom died or grandpa died, or somebody close to you lost his or her life, you might not really be able to concentrate because you're emotionally disturbed, okay? Now, that is psychological noise. Any noise that comes as a result of disturbance in emotion is psychological noise. Now, that is that on the elements of communication. Let me do a really short throwback on the 6 elements. The first, source or sender. The second, message. The third, channel. The fourth, the receiver. The fifth, feedback. And the sixth one, noise, which is divided into physical noise, semantic noise, and psychological noise. Now, thank you very much for having me. If you have comments or other views, share right there in the comment section. And do not forget to like and subscribe. Thank you. I am Deborah Mado from His Inspiration Media. Have a wonderful afternoon.